3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Greetings and salutations, one and all. This is Robert Phoenix, and we are back for another edition of the Astro Weather. And I hope everybody is doing just fine. Perhaps better than fine. Fine is a little mediocre. I had the funniest experience yesterday. I was at HEB, which is where I get my weekly dose of humanity. It's like stepping into a petri dish. HEB. It's a very different kind of culture, and it was the guy who was the checker. And I've seen this guy around before. He's maybe about 5'8", and he looks like a little birth defecty. He's got one arm that's longer than the other. Not quite thalidomide, but one arm is longer than the other. And he seems like maybe he's on the spectrum a little bit. And he's wide. And he wears thick glasses. And so he's my checker last night. And I had the strangest conversation with him. He's like, "How are you tonight, sir? How are you doing tonight?" I said, "Just peachy." I like to respond to people like just peachy. Or I don't know. I like to respond in ways that are not, "Oh, I'm doing well. How are you?" Like I try to go in a different direction. Which I did, and I asked him, "So how are you tonight?" He says, "Could be better, could be worse." I'm like, there you go. Find that middle ground. And then he says, "It'd sure be nice if I could win that lotto." I'm like, well, that's out of left field. Like we went from "how are you" to "sure would be nice if I could win that lotto." I'm like, okay, I'll bite. Oh, so you play the lotto? Oh yeah, I play it. I said, "Have you ever won any money from the lotto? I mean, any money, not the big stuff." So, "Oh, I think I won about $16 one time." I'm like, okay, well, at least you won something. "What would you do if you won the lotto?" "Oh, I'd probably travel. Maybe take a cruise ship somewhere." I'm like, "Well, where would you go?" And he's like, "I think I'd go to Scotland and Japan." I'm like, okay, it's a long journey. And then he shifts. It's like planes, trains, and automobiles. Only we got boats, trains, right? And then he starts talking about, "Well, I'd love to take a train ride across the U.S. and not one of those economy cars." I said, "Oh, like a deluxe overnight sleeper car?" "Yeah, one of those. There's just so much to see." I'm, I'm like, how did I get drawn into this conversation? He goes from wanting to take a cruise ship to see Japan and Scotland to taking a train. It was like, oh, I thought we were talking about cruise ships. Okay, now we're talking about trains. Okay, I can dig it, man. I can dig taking a train trip. But that would be a minor part of just winning the lottery. Like, he hadn't really thought it all through, I think. What I really heard was, "I want to get the fuck out of Kerrville." and see the world. And and what's really interesting is, this guy he was a little defective. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. Okay. He was a little defective, but he had such a positive attitude. And no, it wasn't like, the people on the short bus are happy all the time. I don't know, maybe it was a little bit like that. But he had this great attitude. And and I'm looking at him from my perspective. Like, there's no kind of social box that this guy fits in, except for maybe defective, right? He's got short, and I mean short arms, and one arm is shorter than the other, and he's almost as wide as he is tall. He's got short red hair, and he wears thick glasses. And the guy was authentic. That's where I'm going with all this. He was authentic. He wasn't trying to be anybody else. He seemed to be very okay in his awkward skin. Well, I don't know. I don't spend time around the guy, obviously, but that was my experience with him. He was kind of reconciled. Not even reconciled. He was who he was, right? And it's like, is he like an NPC? Is that what, is that his role? Is he supposed to kind of, but I don't think so, because he, in my world, played a role last night. He wasn't an NPC. I could sit down and talk about the things that we talk about. They may just go right over his head. But he had a role, right? He had a role, and his role was demonstrating that he was really okay with who he was. And from my perspective, and dare I say, flirting with judgment. But I'm just looking at it through the eyes of the world, right? And yet what he demonstrated was perhaps a complete disregard for any kind of judgment or any kind of ability to be put into some kind of a box. It was interesting, and I don't know. I think it was enlightening in a lot of ways, and especially in a society where image has become such a powerful driver culturally. This guy was invested in none of it, zero. Okay, who do we have here? Who's into his house? We got one Bill Smith. We got DJ MC. We got Ole Kobe. Tomorrow's supposed to be the end of a 6-year astrological cycle that started with the lockdown. Any thoughts? Well, here's what I think. The lockdown started with Saturn, probably right around 4 degrees Capricorn. I'm sorry, Aquarius. And so Saturn from 2020 would be at the same degree as Pluto is right now. So that would be that. I'm assuming that's the cycle that they talk about, right? So that Saturn, it's not a true Saturn cycle. A true Saturn cycle would put it into 2027, and that would be the 7-year tilt with Saturn, right? You go Saturn in Aquarius for 3 years, Saturn Pisces for 3 years, and then Saturn in Aries, but not quite all the way through. But it's the Pluto cycle, Saturn Pluto. That would be my educated take on what you're bringing up, Ole Kobe. I'm just going to throw that up there. There you go. Let's see. We got Giovanna misbehaving too. The new next pod. There's Janine. Hello, Janine. Jackie Delario. Lena Winkler's here. There's our guy, Thor at the door. It's Thor's Day. Barbara Boots. Checking in with schizophrenic weather. Rosie Posey. There's a lovely and talented one. Perspectivized. Neo the Wise is with us today. How about that? Hi, Neo the Wise. Lisa Ann White. We got the law. Amy's here. The only prices are crazy. Of course, they would price gouge. Yes. Hope it comes down by month end. Don't count on it. Do not count on it. Paula Bizak. What's happening? There's Diane. Hi, Diane. Aloha. Back to you. Let's see. I like it when you share your personal stories. Steve, sometimes I say, do you really want to know? That's a good one. I kind of, Steve, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. If I'm in a bit of a dark mood, I can go dark when that question comes up. A little dark. I try to hold back the dark ray. I really do. But every now and then, depending on how I'm feeling, they do get something on that spectrum. Southwest Super Chiefs. I mean, I would dig it, man. I would love to go on a train ride from coast to coast in the best sleeper. That would be awesome. That would be really awesome. It would feel like, in some ways, something that may not be on the menu in the future. And if it is, it will be for very exclusive people at very high prices. We got Neil Smith. We got Beth Berry. Yes, Diane. I do have your contact. I will. I think I need to reach out to you today. I will do that. I promise. It's been crazy. I've been getting so many readings lately. I've been really busy. Super, super busy. Let me give you an idea for my day. I'll just break it down for you. So we do this. When I do this, it's an hour long. And then I jump over to 15. I'm not doing 15 today because I've got to catch up on just some stuff, right? I have to catch up on some stuff. But that's an hour, hour and a half. And usually what happens is I have anywhere between an hour to a 2-hour break before my first client. And then from there, I've got basically clients for the rest of the day until about 4 o'clock, depending upon if maybe somebody works and I have to see them at like 5 my time. And then incrementally, I'll have like maybe an hour or so between clients. Sometimes not so much, right? And so by the time 5 o'clock rolls around, like, man, I mean, I've done a lot, and I love what I do, right? I mean, I know that sometimes I look at these numbers on the, I was going back in time last night. I went through YouTube to see how far back, like when was the first Astro Weather show? And I think the first Astro Weather show was in 2023. So this has been going on for almost 3 years now, the Astro Weather. And I was looking at some of those, some of the numbers from back then. And it was like 1.7, 1.8, 1.7, 1.6. A couple shows peaking at 2,000 views. I'm like, wow, and now I'm somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. And so I think about that, right? And it's like, and I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I know that I've probably chased some people off. And if I offended anybody, I apologize. Not that I need you to come back and start watching the show. I'm just saying that in general. If I offended you, and not with my content, but in some other way, shape, or form, like maybe how I've interacted with you or whatever, I do apologize. So maybe that's part of it. Like I kind of ran some people off. I understand that. I get it. Right. But I'll say this. I will say this. That I had some clients yesterday, and when I'm in the zone and I'm doing a reading in a session for a person, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do because it's really magical. Like, and sometimes, I mean, I know at some level how I do what and I'm not just boasting here. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you the mechanics behind it. And there are other things where I don't really understand. I don't know where it comes from. The only thing I can map out, and this is what and I think we all have this ability, by the way. It's not just I'm, Mr. Special with it, but I feel like my higher self is having a conversation with the other person's higher self. I'll give you an example. So yesterday, great client, really great client, and going through like a significant change and wanting to leave their corporate job. And so I always look at, well, what else could this person do? And so I look for certain things inside the chart, and sometimes it's like a flashing red neon sign, right? Flashing red neon sign. And I said to them, have you ever thought about starting your own business where you employ women to clean houses for you? And there was a reason why I chose that, right? So this is astrology. We're into astrology. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an astrology lesson. So what I was doing, I was looking at her fourth house, and there was Saturn and the true node in Virgo in her fourth house. And then the south node in Pisces in her 10th house. And like that, the south node in Pisces, the south node in general in the 10th house is corporate kryptonite. It is corporate kryptonite. Now, you can be successful and work out of the home with the true node in the fourth house. And I've seen this. I've seen this firsthand. The mother of my son had south node in the 10th house. And when I first met her, she was very good at what she was doing, but she really reached the pinnacle of her success working for this company that specialized in first-time parents. And she had the moon and Saturn conjunct her midheaven, right? Moon being the mother. And it was in Gemini, so there was all this communication with newsletters and stuff. She was really, really good at it. It rose through the ranks very rapidly. But normally with that south node in the 10th house, that's not easy to do. And what was fascinating is that once she left that very specific job that was very astrological, Moon, Saturn, like managing all these mothers, mostly mothers, some fathers. But once she left that job, because she was very good at marketing, and took a job in another field or another area, was not as successful. Still good, efficient, very capable person. But the companies were shaky as hell, right? And this continued every time she wanted to be in that corporate space where you had to leave the home and go to the place and do the thing. But once she started working out of the home, because she had true node in Capricorn in the fourth house, once she started working out of the home, she got steady work, gigs on her own terms, own time. Okay, so I'm just giving you like an idea, right? South node, 10th house, corporate kryptonite. So this person has south node in the 10th house. And I look at Saturn, true node, Virgo, and boom, this idea about hiring women and running a cleaning service. Now, what's interesting is that this person lives in an upscale division, and she's actually the head of the HOA there, which I think she's really wrestling with. But she already has, in many ways, a huge customer base right there at her feet, right? So I brought this up. This is a serious person too, by the way. And she thought about it, and I could see the tumblers in her brain starting to click. And one of the things that I was talking about was this allusion to Joan of Arc, right? Sometimes I just get these things, right? And it must have been the moon in Aries. And I was talking about Joan of Arc, and anyway. So at the end, I said, all you got to do is go out and hire yourself an army of like Mexican women to work for you and go out and clean houses, and you could be their general, right? Like that's what I said. And then she said something that kind of blew me away. Like she said, well, I just happen to be white Mexican, and my family is descended from conquistadors. So like a conqueror, right? And it's like that's kind of what I was talking about. It was weird. It was like you go get your army, right? And you're the general, you're the leader. And then she chimes in with this, well, I am white Mexican and my family is descended from conquistadors. And when that happens, this whole idea of how many views I have just goes away, right? Because I realized that I wouldn't be able to connect with people in that way anywhere else. I mean, maybe a little bit, as a general person, like on the street shit. And so I just want to say I am grateful for what I'm able to do. Not everybody understands it, but I'm grateful for it. And over here on this side, I guess we'll just consider this gravy. Gravy. All right. Let's see. We know that this doesn't work, so we have to do it twice. There we go. 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 I keep hearing about false flags. I keep hearing about terror cells. I keep hearing about what can happen to us. And it's got people on their toes. This is the moon in Capricorn. And here we go. This is the moon this whole phase of the moon right here. Very, very important phase. And coming in and starting to square Neptune, Saturn, and Venus. Okay, let's talk about it. What is it? We'll start with you, and then we'll work our way up. Okay. So what does it mean to you? Well, moon Capricorn, we know that it's a little bit on the flinty side, a little stoic, I would say. It's kind of the moon, the rugged moon that can handle just about anything. And usually not with a smile, not with a grimace. I was watching this video last night, and it was tennis players, and their impression of John McEnroe when they first went up against him. And McEnroe was like a wizard, right? The way that he played, and he managed to get inside people's heads. And the one guy who was very interesting was Ivan Lendl. And everybody said that when Lendl was at the top of his game and he was really, really successful as a tennis player, that he was boring. He was like a robot. Lendl was a serious motherfucker. This is the Capricorn moon. And when he first went up against McEnroe, McEnroe cleaned his clock, and Lendl was shocked, and he realized that McEnroe had gotten him out of his game. And what did he do? Ivan Lendl went full Rocky and started to train extra hard and change his diet with the sole intent that he would come up with a strategy to beat John McEnroe. And he did. And this is the story of the moon in Capricorn. The moon in Capricorn will do whatever it takes in order to not only survive, and it's not the best place for the moon, right? It is in its detriment. Yeah, because it's in rulership with moon in Cancer, but here it's in its detriment. But it will do whatever it takes to survive. And sometimes people will judge that. They'll judge that. And it's like, oh, well, you're cold or you're heartless or, emotionally you're brutally efficient. And sometimes that's just the way things are, right? Is that the way things will always be? I don't know. Maybe not, right? The chart changes. You change. Things progress. So how this applies to where we are today, you just got to look up where Capricorn is in your chart. You got this moon floating through your chart. And I feel like on a personal level, it's a real challenge to not take things personally. And you say, well, you can get that with the Aquarian moon, which, hey, guess what? We get to practice it some more. We got a 4-day cycle here where we get to really hone in on not taking things personally. And that's what you get with the moon Neptune square. That's where it is right now. And it's kind of like, oh, well, I've done all these things for you. And you meaning another person. And with Neptune coming in and squaring the moon, it's like you're not grateful. You don't appreciate what I've done. In fact, it can even get rubbed in your face with a moon Neptune square. And all of a sudden, this kind of hard Capricorn moon, right, it becomes softer in a way, but not in I would say not in a positive way, more in a very vulnerable way. And you could say, well, if the Capricorn moon is all hard and shit, then maybe being more vulnerable would be okay. I'm not entirely sure about that. There's other things going on with the Capricorn moon, right? It's in a sextile with Mars. It's in a sextile with Mercury. So there's a different channel of flow that's available. And I just see Neptune, Saturn, Venus here all squared off against the moon. And it's almost an assault on the emotions. And I see the Capricorn moon really as a function of our time right now. Like right now. Like we're going through a time of endurance. Our patience is tested. Our alliances, loyalty, they're all tested. Everything is being tested. But when I think of Capricorn, I think of tests. I think of headmasters and will you pass the test? In a literal sense, because Capricorn is it's like the Hierophant, pass, fail. Can you pass this test? So anytime we get into Capricorn, we get into the territory and terminology of the test. And people at times feel as if they're being tested by God, right? Or tested by, their higher self as a conduit from God. How am I going to react today? If, I have this course or I have this course, which course am I going to take? Which wolf am I going to feed? And this is sort of the function of today. And there's a wound that we become aware of. And with the Capricorn moon, there's a rare instance of personalizing, because it doesn't personalize. Moon in Cancer, man, really personalizes. But this is a rare instance where there's like if you were an armadillo, it'd be like a crack in your shell or in your armor. And so there's another side to this story, which I do think is a bit more positive. We'll spin it a little bit more positively. When you get into these squares, and it's not always the case with a moon square, but it just feels like with the Capricorn moon, again, I just keep coming back to it, that a Neptune square has the potential of actually letting some real emotion in. But it also has this potential of a dam that's about to burst. And, do you want to be flooded with emotion and sensitivity and subjectivity? Like, there's a fine line between taking something on and experiencing it and then taking it personally. And that's where we are with this moon today. And we have this square with the moon and Saturn as well. And I feel like the theme for today is that if you fuck up in your mind, in a subjective way, if you think you fuck up, and the Saturn moon square kicks in, there's a lot of judgment with that. And you could get very depressed. Like, I said the wrong thing, I did the wrong thing, I had the wrong interaction, I didn't mean to come off this way, whatever, right? And then there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of judgment with this Saturn moon square. But there's a remedy for that. And the remedy is the sextile with Pisces. And again, it's a fine line between just blowing somebody or something off and saying, okay, yeah, I get it. I was a dick, or I was an asshole, or I was a bitch, or whatever those things are. And then you just sort of blithely move on. And people understand that lack of insincerity, or lack of sincerity, right? They'd understand that. So you can't really do that, right? You can't really do that with this moon. Like, if you go through something and in your mind, you fuck up, or you have what I would say would be a personal, subjective, emotional response, and you do something like that is out of character to protect yourself. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. This is just a protection mode, and it doesn't go the way you want it to. And then you deal with the blowback of the Saturn moon square. Like, that's where you want to stop and take it in and just say, you know what? I didn't handle that the way that I'd like to. Or it could have been a bit more optimal. And just go inside and reprogram it. Right? Just go inside and reprogram it. Go inside of your brain and play it out all over again. And reanimate the person or the exchange that you wanted to have or would have liked to have had. This is a very, very effective tool. And then this is what I would always do back in the day. Because there was a time in my life I was really obsessed with God. And if I would make some kind of an error, interpersonal error, I would I would beg for forgiveness internally, but I did have this thing where it was like, oh, I know I fucked up, and I know that you know that I fucked up, and I I apologize for that. Right, I'm aware of, and it could have been anything. Right, it could have been uh, again me taking something more personally than I needed to, or me having a strange interaction, whatever, any area. But I would acknowledge my mistake, and I would acknowledge to the creator that I was aware that I had made a mistake. And it was like, I'll do better. Right. And that was part of it. So if you take something like that and you marry it like in your own way, you don't have to like paste and copy or copy and paste, but in your own way, and then you can go in and reprogram the event too. Well, if I was God, I would say, well, how would you have liked to have done that? How would you have liked to have had this interaction unfold? It's like, oh, gee, I never thought about that. Let me think about that. I'm going to grant you the power to redo that entire situation in your mind the way that you would have wanted it to go. Really? Yeah. Go ahead. Try it. Okay. You try it out. It's like, wow, that's really how I wanted it to go. I feel so much better. And it's like good because it's like muscle memory. And you won't, it's like you may have a similar situation somewhere down the line. It won't be exactly the same. Here we go back into Saturn, right? And the test, like, oh, what did you learn? What did you learn from the situation? Yeah. How to respond and what not to do. Because that's the moon and Saturn, right? And everything about Saturn or the moon in Capricorn, everything about Saturn is about like cleaving, removing, stripping away. That's the nature of it, right? And so when we do that, we strip away the illusion, and we're left with something that can be raw and naked, and sometimes not always easy to deal with. Like when you have Saturn transits across, your inner planets, it goes that way, right? So this is an interesting exercise. Just pay attention. Pay attention. On a collective level, boy, this is something completely different, right? This is where, and I don't want it to happen. I don't want to be right, but when you get into this, like that moon square, all those Pisces planets, right? That is like the ideological juice. And it's like, oh, well, we could be dealing with terror cells in this country. People need to be alert. I mean, this is the messaging we've been getting, right? This is the messaging we've been getting over like the last 72 hours with the moon in Sagittarius squaring off against all these Pisces planets. Like, oh my God, yeah, could that happen? Ginning up the fear. Well, now we're in the phase where here comes the moon and it's squaring against all these Aries planets. So we're the next 72 hours is a really critical lunar cycle. Really, really critical. And I just read a story about, what was it? I think it might have been in Iran, where they caught two guys from the Mossad inside of Iran getting ready to set off a bomb. That's what I heard. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it kind of feels very similar in some ways to today's energy as well, where the machinations of mayhem may not really go according to plan. Not with these squares. But on the other hand, the squares put us at our most vulnerable um, place around all of this. And of course, the moon in Capricorn, very officious. And that's just from a social, collective, mundane setting. I have to bring this up. This is interesting. It was just before the eclipse, the lunar eclipse. I talked about Hawaii. Remember that? I said, keep your eye on Hawaii. And lo and behold, look at what happened. And it's like right around the eclipse, Kilauea started to go off again. Look at this. This is a live channel over on YouTube. And remember, that's where the lunar eclipse was at its I guess you call it apogee, right? It was at its most full. It was full, right? It's called full lunar eclipse. It was at its greatest fullness in alignment with Hawaii, and right in the center of the Ring of Fire. And look at this. Now, hopefully, it just stays like this. And you get new landform, new landmass. Apparently, I also saw a UFO in here. There's another video where there was this unidentified flying object that was around this, which I'm sure we're going to see more of in the days to come. Okay. Why don't we talk about our star of the day? And here we go. So our star of the day, there's kind of a theme with our star of the day from yesterday. I tell you, I was going to, here, let me talk about True Hemp Science first. And then I'll get into the star of the day. Let me bring up their website. Chris has such a cool website. Built by my guy, Tommy, who built my website. All right, there we go. You're at truehempscience.com. Geez, I don't know if the 20% off your first order is still here. I don't see it. When you see that, you got to jump on it. Right? You got to jump on. That's what you got to jump on, with the gummies and the CBD for your pets. And I know a lot of you have pet squirrels out there. Anyway, all you got to do, go here and spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you will get a goodie bag, which will include some gummies and some vials with some tinctures in it. You will be happy when your goodie bag comes in with your order, and you will be very happy with the products from True Hemp Science, which is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. Okay, let's get into our star of the day here. Oh, where is it? Right there? No. There we go. Okay. So it's an interesting reflection or companion from yesterday's star of the day. Here's the story I wanted to tell. Today is Ron Jeremy's birthday. And I could have done a really bang up and funny job with Ron Jeremy's chart. And then I looked at Ron Jeremy and I thought to myself, this man is disgusting. He's absolutely disgusting. And he got into this, it's kind of like, I mean, there kind of is a God, right? Like when you see what happened to Ron Jeremy and what he turned into, it is bizarre. And there's this weird sense of almost like biblical justice in some way. So he got involved in a bunch of rape stuff and was, essentially doing the Bill Cosby thing or what Bill Cosby was accused of, but with lots of women, and they all started to come forward, and he wound up going to prison. And the rapid aging of him was phenomenal. Like, I can't even recognize the guy. And now he's got dementia. And it's like, do I really want to do that guy's chart? I'm like, no, he's kind of disgusting. So let me give you somebody that's uplifting. Al Jarreau. That's right, Al Jarreau. Yesterday was Bobby McFerrin. Today was Al Jarreau. And they have some very similar themes. Very, very similar themes. Al Jarreau was born in Wisconsin, right? Bobby McFerrin was not born in California, but they both matriculate to California, and they both wind up in the Bay Area. And back in the late 60s, Al Jarreau, who was a psychologist, he got a degree in psychology and was a social worker. He was very popular. Seventh-day Adventist. So he grew up in a religious household. Let's put now, keep that in mind. That's a placeholder for his chart. And at night, he would go to this little, I guess, restaurant, wine bar in Sausalito, which used to be a really cool place. And he had a guitar player, and they would do duos together. And so Al Jarreau had this really great voice, and he did this kind of on his spare time, but he got really, really good at it. And eventually he and the guitarist wound up moving to LA to take on a full-time career in music. And he started to get gigs. And eventually Al Jarreau gets signed to a record deal. And he becomes like there was a sound in LA at the time. And it was like Tom Scott, the LA Express, Steely Dan has a little bit in it. You have all these session players like Larry Carlton and Steve Gadd and Joe South and or Joe Sample rather, and they would all play on these records, right? And so they show up on Al Jarreau's record. He becomes this jazz singer, and Al Jarreau becomes huge. We're in This Love Together was a massive hit. Massive. And so yesterday, what we saw with Bobby McFerrin's chart, which was that Mercury-Uranus square, or trine rather, which allowed him to improvise and do all kinds of unusual stuff with his voice. Well, here we have, again, they both have third house Mercuries, which I found to be really interesting. And so again, here, Mercury is the voice, right? So it's double voice in the third house. And he's got a Sun, Pluto, and Mercury-Pluto trine. So in the Al Jarreau story, right, that the Sun-Pluto trine is the thing that drives him to become successful. Clearly, right? And it's following his instincts, following his creative instincts. The Mercury-Pluto trine is something else altogether. It's number one, it's making money with his voice, with Pluto being paid for it, royalties, all the things that go along with it, writing the songs, very Pluto 8th house. But it also speaks to the quality and the depth and the intensity of his voice. Now, with Neptune, the highest planet in his chart, Al Jarreau was religious. And I talked about how when he was growing up, he was a Seventh-day Adventist. And he eventually moves on to the Church of the Science of Mind, and then he moves into Scientology. Like Al Jarreau is a seeker, and you can see that with Sagittarius on the ascendant, and this idea of like spiritually expressing himself is very important with Neptune. And there's and this gets into, like, you can really see his chart in this one thing I'm about to tell you about. It's that Mercury Pluto trine and getting into the depth of everything, right? Going and kind of blowing you out of the water. And he was the musical guest one time on Second City TV, which I loved. I loved all those guys, John Candy and Harold Ramis, and Catherine O'Hara just passed away recently. But they were great, really, really great. And it's a skit that's a takeoff on The Jazz Singer. And Al Jarreau, who of course he's black. What's interesting about Al Jarreau is that the older he got, the lighter his complexion got. And I don't know if that was just a byproduct of like whatever was going on with his physiognomy, or he went the Sammy Sosa route. I don't know. But you look at Al Jarreau in the 70s, you look at Al Jarreau like in the 90s, early 2000s, very, very different skin tone and complexion. Just to notice, not a judgment. Anyway, but in this skit, he's lighter than he is here, but he's still black, right? And it's a takeoff on The Jazz Singer. And I think Eugene Levy plays his father. And his father is like a music agent. And he's a hipster. And he wants to turn, it's like the reverse of The Jazz Singer, where like the modern version with Neil Diamond, you know, his father played by Laurence Olivier, who's a rabbi, and he wants the Neil Diamond character to, you know, be a cantor. And by the way, the first person that did it was Eddie Cantor, the jazz singer. It was Al Jolson. I bet Eddie Cantor's somebody different. It was Al Jolson, and it's the Neil Diamond jazz singers are retelling of that story. And what Neil Diamond wants to do is he wants to sing jazz, pop, rock instead of being a cantor, right? And so he even lies to Laurence Olivier on Laurence Olivier's deathbed. Promise me, my son, that you will take up the tradition in the temple and you will be God's voice. Some shit like that, right? And Neil Diamond says, yes, Papa. Yes, Papa. He's lying to him. He's just telling him that so he can die peacefully. And I can kind of get behind that. And then he goes off and he becomes like, a pop vocal star. Al Jolson winds up singing Mammy in blackface. Well, this is a reverse version of that. And Eugene Levy wants Al Jarreau to be a jazz singer. He's like an agent. Like his dad is like a booking agent. He's like, yeah. Why don't you be a jazz singer? You'd be so great. You make tons of money, And the Al Jarreau character is like, Dad, I just want to sing in the temple, right? He's like flipping the script. And there's the scene, the skit, and he's really good. And the skit culminates with Jarreau singing some kind of very religious song in Hebrew. And it's like, holy shit. Right. And this skit just does this 180. And it's like there's two things in the chart that really typify this. First of all, it is the power of that Mercury Pluto trine. That's where I'm going with all of this. The power of the Mercury Pluto trine. And when he tapped into that and he started to sing the Hebrew thing, oh my God, it was mind blowing. I mean, it was, look it up. Just go on YouTube. I can't play it. Al Jarreau, SCTV. Watch the skit. It's funny as hell. It sets you up, and then wham. You're like, where did that come from? And that's also very much Neptune in the ninth house. Now, Neptune and Virgo, not the best place for Neptune. But Neptune in the ninth house is accidentally exalted because Neptune in Sagittarius is exalted. So what we have here is what I would call a push effect with the opposition, right? And that Al Jarreau could push his voice across the chart. And remember, this is the highest part of the chart. And he would leave people with a very healing experience with the music. And in this case, with the SCTV skit, channeling something very spiritual, like, Hebrew chants and songs are really not necessarily my thing, right? But he pulls it off in such a way, it's like, holy shit. There's some spirit coming through here. So he was a very interesting character. And if you look at his midheaven, it's in Libra, right? And his true node is in Libra. He's supposed to go to the 10th house. And Libra is art and beauty. And this is a hallmark of Al Jarreau's songs. And a lot of his songs are about love and about commitment and relationship. Yeah, it sells, but it's also not very far afield from who he is. And the 10th house is very public, right? So he's here to bring beauty and was here to bring beauty and harmony and peace and something of aesthetic value to the world. Mission accomplished. Mission totally accomplished. Mother, father, moon, Saturn down in the 4th house. Hey, Mr. Cardinal. We got Mr. Cardinal here. That's the roots. The roots with Al's parents go deep. And I think not always an easy relationship to work out. I think he had to go to California, like a lot of people did back in the day, to free himself psychically. And he's got Mars conjunct Uranus. Look at that. We're almost in Kazemi territory there, almost, right? 18, 16. But again, it's in the 5th house. And the 5th house is creative. And he was able to take a hobby, which was singing. It was a hobby. He had a full-time job. And he was able to do something with it, right? He was able to workshop his Mars and take his hobby out. And it was a time where you could do that. There were all these places. I could go a little bit longer today since I'm not doing a 15. But there were all these places back in the day where you could perform. And all these places were hungry. They were looking for people to come in and perform and maybe, play for a meal and tips, whatever, right? If you played in a bar band, you know, you get the bar stipend, whatever it is, you know, like $25 a person and unlimited beer, whatever. It generally was not a lot, but you got to go out, perform your songs, get better, basically drink for free, and get a few bucks for gas. And that's how people cut their teeth. You couldn't do that today. You know, Al Jarreau's trajectory, just you couldn't do it today. First of all, there's just not many places to play. Like in this town, I can tell you right now, I know of one place, and there may be more, but I don't really get out very much here. But there may be one place in this town where you can be on a small little stage and play a guitar, sing a song, whatever. That's it. And I think there's more opportunities in Fredericksburg where there's more tourists. And I've seen them. There's a difference with even the performing. Like what you'll see in Fredericksburg are either like combos, like a 4-piece, or maybe a person with a guitar and maybe another accompaniment. And they're mostly doing standards, right? They're mostly, especially if they've got a combo, they're basically cover bands because that's what tourists want, right? But back in the day when Al Jarreau was in Sausalito singing at this one restaurant, people didn't really care if you threw in a Simon and Garfunkel song every now and then. People loved it, right? But you could do your own compositions. And it was a time where creatively it was much more open. Like if a person hadn't heard the song before, they were going to experience you and your craft and your artistry at that level. And it feels like now, particularly because the bulk of the music viewing public is much older, they want to hear things that they're familiar with. And quite honestly, I'm not always really that impressed with singer-songwriter material. Like now. It's one of my least favorite genres, just because you can play guitar and strum some chords and write a song about like your relationship with your dog or something. It doesn't mean it's going to be compelling. And you kind of have to sit there and go, oh, yeah, this is nice, I guess. I mean, I couldn't do it. So I'm not, if we're just looking at it, well, at least he can do it. Well, there's some truth to that. At least he can do it. I couldn't do it. But if I could do it, I would do it differently. I'm just saying, okay? But when Jarreau was coming up, he had the opportunity to do that, right? He had the opportunity to take his hobby, singing, the voice, Taurus, and connect with it, right? He's got the Sun, Mercury sextile to Mars, Uranus. And then there's the energetic lift to Neptune in the 9th house. And with Sagittarius, sort of putting out those good vibes, right? Being enthusiastic, having faith that things would turn out. And they did. They absolutely did. So he workshopped his 5th house. But again, it was a time where you could do that. And then the natural progression was, well, we need to we need to head to Los Angeles. And they still have plenty of places to play in LA, but what they had in LA that they didn't have in Marin County or the San Francisco Bay Area were the major labels and the studios. There were some good studios in the Bay Area. Like I think the Automat, the Record Plant, those were the two really big studios in the Bay Area. The Record Plant, Journey would record there, and Narda Michael Walden had his studio. It's still there, called Tarpon. But it was the Automat and the Record Plant. Those were the two big recording studios. LA, they were everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And then you had all the session musicians. And then you would go and you'd find new people to play with. And, and then it's like, oh, I got a deal. Well, let me go get Larry Coryell. Let me go get Steve Gadd. And let me go get Tom Scott and all these people. And we'll make a record. And there was, deals and songwriting and all the things that went along with it, right? And you'll never see that again today. And this is why I chose like two singers for the Star of the Day back to back. And Bobby McFerrin, of course, is still, in fact, a friend of mine just sent me a text yesterday, and she was in California about 6 weeks ago and actually went to go see Bobby McFerrin perform in Berkeley. So Bobby's still doing his thing. Al Jarreau, really weird, right? Al Jarreau announced that he was retiring at the age of 72. No more touring, no more records. He was retiring. Al Jarreau passed away 2 days later. It's like he had fulfilled his mission. He fulfilled it. And all you people out there thinking, Jesus Christ, if I retire, am I going to die? I don't think that's really the message here. I think the message is Al Jarreau had completed his mission. He was ready to go. Ready to go. And there's something holistic and beautiful about that. And you could say to yourself, well, oh, it was so sad. We got robbed of Al Jarreau. 72, it's still, it's not like incredibly old, but look, Donald Trump's president. He's way older than 72. But Al Jarreau had given everybody the best, right? You got the best of Al Jarreau from when he started recording until he retired. He more than lived out his talent and experience. The guy toured relentlessly all over the world. Won 5 Grammys. We're in this Love Together. Massive hits. Absolutely massive hit. So it's a weird story, but in some ways it's fitting. He was just done. Just done. All right. That's our True Hemp Science Star of the Day. I'm out of here. I'm not going to be doing 15 today. I got just stuff I got to catch up on. And, I'll save my rant for tomorrow here on the Friday Forecast. So anyway, thanks for being here. If you're still around, appreciate you. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. And if you have, please check to see if you still are in subscription mode and get the notifications. That's it. Take care of yourselves. Have a very blessed day. I'm Robert Phoenix. Love you all. Chatari, you're the best. Bye for now.